Great, thank you very much for...
Introduce yourself and then start off.
Indeed, I will. I noticed that you said your company's been around for 49 years, and so have you. You arrived at the same time? Hello, I'm Adibf. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Shimmer, and it's an advertising business. So Sharif has been teasing me that I'm doing free advertising, but that's what I do advertising, so that's why I'm wearing my t-shirt. I've also written a book called Shimmer Don't Shake, which is about the adoption, the embrace of AI by publishing. So I hope to be able to cover a few different subjects as the day goes on, but I'm starting off our conversation because all of my colleagues here will be in quite greater detail going into particular aspects of some of the broad picture that I'll begin with, and of course I'll be happy to go back to anything that somebody's interested in once we begin. The thing that I've found fascinating about the horizontal picture of artificial intelligence is just how it's beginning to affect all parts of society. That ultimately influences publishing, so I think it's relevant to try and take the macro picture before we take the micro picture. And the macro picture, if I can touch on a few things before I hand on to Caroline, encompasses things like neuroscience. So you will probably all have heard of a man called Professor Daniel Kahneman. He died recently. He won a Nobel Prize for his work on System 1 and System 2, which is our way of feeling quickly and then thinking slowly, effectively. He called it slow and fast thinking. And the way we're mesmerized by AI, why we're all talking about AI, is it's doing something that we've never seen before in society or civilization. We tend to feel very quickly already as an audience. You feel whether this is relevant for you, whether you're interested, and then you'll think a bit more slowly about the content. Well, what's never happened before is to see thinking happening at an amazing lightning speed. And that's really what AI does for us. When we talk to AI, we're astonished by how quickly it thinks back to us. So it's kind of breaking one of the rules of neuroscience that we've got as in evolutionary terms. I think that's one of our reasons for being fascinated by it. It's also beginning to affect creativity. So the sort of slightly more superficial discussion that people have is that we're using AI to write books. Yeah, okay, well some people are doing that, and there is quite a lot of not very good literature being produced by AI. But what's more interesting, I think, is the way AI is enabling you. It's like an allied intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, and you can use it strategically in your creative endeavors. So when I was writing my book, there's a point when I was trying to compare the history of literature and publishing with the history of artificial intelligence, and I was looking for comparisons between a Sumerian clay tablet and a neural network. I have no friend that can have that conversation with me. And I spoke to Claude, and I had a good conversation with Claude, and it enabled me to be more creative in the chapter that I considered that in. So I think there are ways in which creativity is very practically constructive in publishing. I think we also have significant changes coming our way in education. That again is going to impact creativity and content, because until this point in history, the way wisdom and kind of progress was measured was by how much you retained in your head, how wise you were, tended to correspond with how much you had in your head and how quickly you could access it. Nowadays, particularly with Gen Z and absolutely with Gen A, you stream everything, so you access information when you need it, and the emphasis is moving from retention to critical thinking, and I think that's fantastic. I think our education needs to focus on not helping people to retain information, but to help them critically think through it. And that's also going to produce new literature that's much more challenging. And then finally in publishing, before I hand on, there's lots of good things which are to do with interactive creativity, the enabling of strategic creativity as I talked about. And there's some negative things around ethics and the copyright issues and the legal issues which arise around that, which of course we've got experts here to talk about. But I'll be happy to answer questions or talk about any of these things in greater detail. I just wanted to start with this wide picture of a very positive embrace of AI that I think is going to enable a renaissance in many ways of literature and publishing. And I'm excited about its implications for creativity in particular.
Thank you very much. Caroline, can you give us more on the UK and what they're doing now with the AI as a Publishers Association.
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline from the UK Publishers Association. We represent almost 200 UK publishers from global household names through to small independent houses. And what's been really fascinating in the last few years is how AI is affecting all publishers of all sizes and disciplines, and is also being embraced by all sorts of publishers in their work in really, really exciting ways, and that's across consumer publishers who might be using it to enhance their marketing, academic publishers who are now offering tools that allow researchers to summarize vast quantities of scholarship in an instant and produce results that are properly have proper citations, and also education publishers who are exploring how learners might use AI in their learning journey to have a more personalised learning experience. So it's a really exciting time in publishing, as Nadeem touched upon, with AI sort of energising and providing new products and solutions across the publishing landscape. There are challenges, however, and a big one that I'm going to start by touching on is the legal picture. So the large language models that many people will be familiar with that generate human-like text have been trained on vast quantities of existing text. And where that training has happened without the rights holder's permission being sought and a license being secured, copyright can be infringed. And that's a huge issue for the authors whose work has been used without their permission, and for the rights holders who haven't been recompensed for their work being used. So both in the UK, but also on a global level, you're seeing rights holders and creators standing up and saying that the use of their work without permission is copyright infringement and needs to stop. So while we absolutely should explore the positives, and I'm really excited and happy to do that today, it's also important to explore some of those challenges around copyright infringement. That's the copyright infringement that's taking place is bad for creators, it's bad for the rights holders, and also fundamentally it's bad for the AI products. If you're putting poor quality content into generative AI, you're very likely to get poor quality content out. So what we'd like to see at the UK Publishers Association, and we know that this is a view shared across the world by many other rights holder groups, is AI developers seeking licenses when they want to use rights holders' content and being transparent about the content that they have already used in their work, so rights holders can address where copyright infringement has taken place. And we think when that happens, we will actually see a world in which creators, rights holders and AI developers can all flourish together, and we have much more reliable and trustworthy AI products.
Thank you very much. Now we can switch to Arabic, I think.
I will deliver the introduction in English.
Okay. To Dr. Muhammad, we start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have been in the ICT industry, especially in consulting, for more than 20 years, and in the last I would say 2 years, we have been witnessing this revolution of generative AI I think generative AI is exposing all industries for disruption, and I think it is mandatory for each one of us to reconsider his priorities in terms of growth, how to develop, etc. And as I'm wearing the hat of the consultant, was among others who are trying to maximize the good use of AI in the Arab region context, I would say. And also I'm connected with, or I'm working or volunteering with the Supreme Council of Culture in Egypt. It is the think tank of the Egyptian culture ecosystem in Egypt, and we have been studying the AI and the generative AI impact on the culture and how it is impacting the awareness. And we have been in this process since, we have been in this since the launching of ChatGPT and what it did in all the content generation, etc. And we are addressing all the challenges from the different angles. Not only the technological part, but the societal part, the developmental, the economic impact, the impact on all aspects related to how we shape the future brains of our children, our youth, and how they are looking at our heritage, our cultural heritage. Today I will be speaking more about the AI and the generative AI, more specifically in the Arabic context. How we protect our heritage, how we protect and develop the skills needed in this industry, so we in the Arab region can cope with the changes. It is dynamic and disruptive, and we have to have collaborative, I would say, collaborative policies to move forward in this direction, and this is will be my main topic today. Thank you.
Dr. Saeed.
مساء الخير, السلام عليكم. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will carry the conversation on my colleagues here. My name is Saeed Al-Bahri, Dr. Saeed Al-Bahri, and I'm the director for the Center of Future Studies at the University of Dubai. I've been in AI almost throughout my life. Actually, I did my master's degree in artificial intelligence. This was way back in 1988, where I had to, at that time, neural networks was just coming out in the 80s, and I said, being specializing in bioengineering and interested in applications of technology in medicine, so I said, let me use neural networks and in this area in medicine. So I had to build and construct a small neural networks to classify heart attacks. So I had to work with the New England Medical Center in Boston to train the network to be able to categorize and classify the patients coming to complain of a chest pain, shortness of breath, whether that person might have a heart attack. And surprisingly, at that time, talking about more than 33 years ago, I had a very small IBM PC 8286 that took me 48 hours for the network to converge for the words. Now, what you hear about the parameters when we speak about large language models, for that network to converge and give me the results, around 75% predicting the outcome that a person might be having a heart attack. So I come from this background, but I've been speaking for the last 4 to 5 years about ethical and responsible AI. Why I'm speaking about this? Because I feel that the society today need to understand AI and need to understand when AI goes wrong, what's the implications, of that, and how each and every one of us might be affected by the algorithms that are invisible in our day-to-day life. They decide on almost everything we do. They decide on where we take our children to school. They decide on where we get accepted at universities. They provide recommendations, and they decide on many of the things that we do in our daily life. So I'll be touching on AI ethics and responsible AI. But to see the advancement today, I've been a great user of using large language models, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Llama, from Meta that just recently released a week ago, Llama 3, or whether it's Gemini Pro. And I think as we talk about this subject of content generation using AI and, of course, and authorship and publishing, the impact. My colleagues here spoke a little bit about how AI is helping us today as authors or as content writers, because I come from an education background, so I rely on large language model heavily in my daily work. But not only this, but also in how we can use these tools creatively to amend our capabilities, you know, to do things better, to be critical about what we author, about what we write, and how we can partner. You know, we think about it in a partnership way, how we can partner with these tools so they can assist us in doing our things much more creatively and in a more responsible and ethical manner. I'll be focusing, I think, during the questions about some of the challenges that we face today and the industry is facing, how we can leverage on generative AI and large language models, what are the skills probably that we need as an authors to be aware of, and also some of the legal issues that we see surfacing today due to use of large language models in the publishing. Caroline and Sadiq here have, Nadim has already spoken about some of the copyright infringement and issues like that. So this is in a nutshell my engagement will be during this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saeed. That's very inspiring for me because I come almost from the same generation when we thought that in the year 2000 the car will be flying and everything will be easy and stuff like that. And I think we're having a moment like this now with AI, that you think that AI will take over, will do this and do that. So Nadim, tell me, how can I use AI in my publishing business? We are here in a book fair. We have everybody almost are publishers who are sitting or using this. How we can really use it, not in the flying car model, in a real life model.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose I've got two perspectives on it. One I've already touched upon as an author, but I think, you know, in the publishing world, if you see AI as your companion, as your ally, rather than as your enemy and your foe, I mean, there are legal issues, as Caroline talked about, they will be resolved in court. They're at a sort of more technical level, and they're at a compensation and revenue level. But in terms of your kind of practical application of AI in your writing, I think you can do research, you can conceptually colliding things that you haven't thought about before. There's a whole host of things which, as a creative writer or as a researcher, you can really use AI very positively for. Let me, however, dwell a bit longer on the second perspective I have, which is that I run an applied AI company. We are an AI native company, and we're purely focused on publishing. So it's an interesting use case of how AI has enabled a new thing to happen in publishing. I don't know how familiar you all are with business models, but there are things called long-tail businesses, which is where you have a lot of assets, actually it's like the backlist in publishing, where things can't generate enough budget for them to be promoted or made very visible very easily, because they're either too low margin or too low volume. And so traditional means of promoting or allowing those things to be discovered has been economically unviable. AI disrupts that economic model completely. So what we do in my business, for example, is to employ large language models. Initially, there's a three-part engine here, and I'll describe the three parts quickly. The first part analyzes every single book with a large language model. Publisher sends us an EPUB. We only work with publishers' materials, things given to us. They're hermetically sealed, so they don't go into the training data. But we apply a large language model to that EPUB. And we understand what we call as book DNA, which is comprised of two things. Its structure, it might be a story about mackerel fishing in Sweden, but also its psychological profile, so it might be about depression and melancholy and cruelty. Like, it's a weird book, but that's what this book is about. Mackerel fishing in Sweden, melancholy, cruelty, depression. So the first machine has analysed the book's DNA and said, uniquely, this book has this fingerprint. Interesting. It hands it to the second machine in our advertising factory, so to speak, which is using generative AI, diffusion models, which produce images. It doesn't start with somebody else's image, it doesn't start from anything except a single pixel that says, if you want me to represent melancholy, I've learned that melancholy tends to have this sort of vibe about it, this sort of atmosphere. And depression looks like this, and cruelty looks like that. And it produces a very nuanced psychological expression, manifests the book DNA. And then it says, okay, I've created advertising assets now, which are faithful to the book. It's the pages of the book coming to life. So that's really positive for the author and for the publisher. And it hands it to the third machine in our AI suite, which is a media matching, a media deployment model that says, okay, well, I know there are people in the world who are into macro-phishing, Sweden, depression, melancholy, cruelty, and I know that they're on Meta at 12 o'clock in the morning over here looking at those things. And it deploys the advertising that the AI has analyzed, generated, and now put into a campaign. And it matches that book with people who will find its DNA attracted to them. It's psychologically suitable for them. So Porter Anderson in Publishing Perspectives described what Shimmer does as reverse discoverability. Instead of always trying to recommend to readers what they should read, we're instead taking books and saying, we're bringing the pages to life with AI, both in analysis and in manifestation, advertising form, and then people will come to it. So it's a complete reversal of the economics and the recommendation system, and it can only have happened because of AI. So it's a really innovative approach. I've been very pleased we're doing it. I'm sure other people will follow us and do a similar thing. But at the moment we're unique in doing that, and we're getting huge traction. We launched 6 months ago, and we've got about 130 publishers already working with us. So there's a huge need for this, to liberate books which have been quietly sitting in the dark, not really finding an audience. And so the authors have much more reach and discovery, the publishers have got better monetization of their catalogs, and readers are matched with better books for them, they're more fulfilling. So that's a really practical application of AI.
Quick questions with this. Does it work across all genres of books?
It works across all genres of books. The thing that we're not able to do very well yet is highly illustrated books, because we're not using AI vision, but we're experimenting with it. And as soon as we do that, we can do illustrated books.
And does it work with other languages or English only?
It does work with other languages, but as a business, we're deploying only in English so far. We will be going into all languages.
Maybe we should try it in Arabic and see
We should.
how it
If I
works.
can speak Arabic, the AI can speak Arabic.
Okay, thank you very much. Carolyn, we were thinking of, in the Arab world now, as AI is a new thing, that there should be some changes in legislation, and we should include some protection for the author or the publisher or the rights holder of the company. What did you do in the UK about this?
So the situation in the UK is still evolving, and part of my role is actually to work very closely with the UK government on what steps it takes next. But you're absolutely right to pick up on the fact that for every government, this is a huge issue. All governments will be exploring the massive opportunities that AI represents, but also how to harness those in a way that doesn't undermine other industries, such as the publishing industry. I mean, in the UK, our copyright law means that the act of training a large language model already is copyright infringement. If you don't seek permission, it's already copyright infringement under UK law. And so I think what you'll see in the coming years are legal cases in which AI developers who have infringed copyright are taken to court. That's already happening quite famously both in the UK and in the US, where Getty Images has taken Stability AI to court on copyright infringement over images. And I think you'll see it happening increasingly in the tech space as well. However, there might be some jurisdictions where new legislation is needed to ensure that the use of rights holders' work without permission is very explicitly seen as copyright infringement. Another thing that governments can do in a really positive way, and this has just happened actually in the European Union, which has brought in a dedicated AI Act, and I imagine globally lots of other governments will be thinking about doing similar. In the EU, they've just brought a requirement in that any AI developer has to be transparent about the data that it has used to train its model. Now that's really positive, because if it's sought licenses for the data that it's used, or if it's using data that isn't subject to copyright, so there's no problem there for the AI developer. What they've done is legal. But if they have infringed copyright, then rights holders know. So a really positive thing that governments around the world can do, following in the footsteps of the EU Act, is to introduce transparency requirements about if you've got an AI model, what data has that been trained on, and is that data subject to copyright?
Quick question also about this, because we're doing the same, we're trying to change the law in Egypt about this, and we're discussing what clauses should be changed, but you also don't think of now, you should think at least of 10 to 20 years, because changing the law doesn't happen easily, at least in our side of the world, so it takes a long time. So you have to think of where will it go in the future and predict and start to put clauses that can do this, because for instance the copyright law didn't cover the electronic rights, and then it started a little bit and now it's changing so much. So when you start something like this, who you sit with to discuss? Do you get like technicians? Do you sit with IT? Do you sit with publishers? Who sits on the table and discuss what should be changed so we work on this?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, these conversations have to be future-looking because AI is developing incredibly quickly, and legislation doesn't always keep up. I mean, legislation moves slowly and technological development moves quickly. So I think there are two really important things. I think it's having the right people around the table, and governments can play a really important role in this, in making sure that you have leading technologists, leading academics at the table, as well as the rights holders, as well as the AI developers. And I think another thing is to make sure your legislation is led by principles, and broadly copyright law should reflect that. So what is the principle you are trying to achieve? Now, copyright law should protect the principle that you reward the creator of that work, and if they assign their rights to someone else, really through their choice, you reward the rights holder. So you will sometimes, hear it said that, there are legal arguments around the fact that large language models have used work without permission. People will argue, which we at the Publishers Association disagree with, but people will argue that maybe it doesn't constitute infringement. But I think you look at the principle of what has happened, which is that authors can put their name into some of these large language models and have a whole chapter of their work regurgitated, and say do we not want a law in place where if you are an author and you have put your heart and soul into a book, that it cannot be the case that the law allows for models that have hoovered up that whole book and regurgitate that book, and you're not recompensed. So I think also thinking about our legislation at a principled level, rather than focusing in tiny detail on the technology, which will change very quickly, is important.
Dr. Mohammed, you're one of the leading figures in Egypt when it comes to AI and technology, and also you're a member of the Higher Supreme Council for Culture in Egypt, which is the mix exactly that we want. So what's the role of the Higher Supreme Council and your role in protecting the heritage that you said? Because Egypt is known, we had a lot of stolen heritage, physical parts all around the world. And now what about the culture part? Because this is the new thing that people are trying to keep. And we have a saying that a lot of the Egyptian stuff are now being recorded in UNESCO as other countries, and we're very far behind this. Can we use AI in this, or how we do it?
Yeah. When the ChatGPT and the generative AI introduced, we had a large wave of rejection from people in the music industry and the publishing industry everywhere. And we have seen this in the Supreme Council. In all our sessions, we conducted about 40 sessions about generative AI and how it will be impacting and interactive. And most of the time, people are rejecting AI and rejecting the future, especially from age 45 plus. But for younger people, it is more. It is more. They want to learn more. And after studies and a lot of of work with them, we have come up, we did come up with a conclusion that if we are talking about the book industry, the publishing, the traditional book industry, it is about 130 billion US dollar global industry, the global industry. I think with generative AI, we are enlarging this market by introducing the content itself. We will be focusing on the content itself, the wealth of knowledge and wealth of content we have. That's why the publishing houses, they should be up for making changes to their business model. How to monetize more using the AI, not necessarily to fight the AI, but to cope with the change and make it for their good or their benefit. Also, I think with the introduction of AI and the language models, we could realize the promise of the metaverse. And I say the promise because it is not well proved until now. But the number says that it will be between 8 and 30 trillion by year 2030 to 2040. But I'm looking at the metaverse not as the word, the buzzword, but as interactivity. I'm talking about how the concept itself, because I think this is the evolution of book. The evolution of traditional book is to be more interactive, more enriching, more immersive. So it will be more acceptable for Generation Z and Alpha. And this is the main problem we are facing in the Arab world, because we are not reaching out to the younger youth or the younger generations with the Arab cultural heritage. The Arab cultural heritage is not communicated almost to these generations, because we are not using the proper format. We are not using the proper medium. We are not adapting it to their preferences. It is very important that we use the technology, generative AI, for this purpose. And that's why in the Higher Supreme Council of in Egypt, of Culture in Egypt, we are working on overarching policies to motivate all people in the creative industries to work with generative AI for their benefit. Looking at all the aspects of the issue, because it is not related to technology only. I always say all things related to digital transformation in general, it is 30% technology and 70% people. It is about people. So generative AI also is about people. It is about how we are going to use the technology for our benefit. But the technology alone cannot realize the benefits and the advancement of the technology without making the human touch, I would say, or the augmentation of the value we provide. Without this, we will lose jobs, and we will be looking at the negative side of the AI without the positive side. In order to fight the negative side, you have to increase the portion of the positive side. And the only way to do this is to engage more into the technology. That's why I think, as Arab world, we have to work with the UAE initiative for G42, the language model in UAE. They have invested in this, and we should be, as startups and people working in technology, to integrate with the UAE language model. And we have we should have some sort of alliance to have collaborative development in this part, because unless we have I was on an event, online event seminar, and we were talking about the generative AI and how it will be used with cultural heritage to identify the old, I would say, artifacts from the Osman period, etc., and identifying the language itself and using the generative AI to read old language or to read Arabic. It needs lots of information, lots of data sets. How can we achieve this without collaboration? It is not possible. So in order to face these challenges, we have to collaborate.
So collaboration is the key in this. هنبتدي ناخد أسئلة بعد الدكتور سعيد، فاللي عايز يسأل ممكن يجهز. We'll start taking questions after Dr. Saeed if someone is interested in asking something. Dr. Saeed, you live in one of the most diverse countries in the world, I think, and one of the most diverse cities even in the country. And AI is there every day around you, and it has to talk to too many people and too many diverse people. What are the challenges and biases that you see around?
Great. Well, before I answer the question, let me just say a couple of things. Nadeem, I will be happy to give you my book, Digital Nations, if you can find the DNA of this book and find the right audience. Although the book is becoming popular, actually, I published my book, Digital Nation, a couple of years back in 2019 in English. In 2020 came in Arabic, and it's about the digital transformation journey in the UAE. What are the lessons learned and what are the challenges and what maybe some of the lessons that other transformation leaders they can take from the UAE experience in this digital transformation. The book is available in the exhibition here, and it's being publicized across the world. Actually, I was happy really to see that the book at one time was one of the best technology books on Amazon in Amazon Arabia. But going back to what Caroline has mentioned about the copyright laws, and I'm happy to see that the Middle East here is really advancing when it comes to copyright laws. Saudi Arabia, actually last year, 2023, I think September or October, they proposed an amendment to the IP protection law in Saudi Arabia regarding two things. Regarding AI-generated content, is that can be protectable, and also AI-assisted content. So if an author uses an AI in his work, is that work can be protectable? And the law, they have made an amendment and some clauses in the law to allow for such AI-assisted content so that the authors. Now the problem comes about how you interpret significance, because it says that if someone has used AI, in his work, to what level of significance use AI? Is the AI has done everything for you, or you used it probably like Nadeem here is using AI creatively? I actually teach this art of prompting as part of the master classes which I conduct from time to time to the UAE government here in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and to teach people how to effectively use large language models. I mean, you talk to people and they say, some of them, well, I use ChatGPT, but it's not helpful. It did not really help me. Most of the responses are generic, and I could not really take it further. It's all about the context, what context you provide, and there is, believe me, there is a framework, that when you chat with these large language model, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Anthropic large language model, or it's Llama, how to write that perfect prompt that eventually will generate the outcome that you want. But commenting on the question here, Sharif, that you asked, what are the challenges that we see with this technology? One of which is I need to highlight this. these large language models are not smart. You know, when I say are not smart, they are not like our brains. They are good at predicting the next word. So they have been designed to predict what the next word that should come within a certain context. And when you look into the output and you say, well, that makes sense to a certain extent. But really, you know, it's about human creativity and maintaining this creativity and originality, because many of the times you find that these large language models give you, you know, a generic content. Sometimes, you know, they can plagiarize. Like, for example, we see, you know, occasionally ChatGPT and others, maybe 5% they steal from the training data, and this is what actually the case that we saw in New York, between the New York Times and between OpenAI and Microsoft. The New York Times claims that OpenAI trained their large language models, ChatGPT 4, on copyrighted news articles from New York Times, and they brought this case to the court and they showed where this really happened, exactly word by word, letter by letter to a certain extent. So plagiarism is one thing, and also sometimes you might find that large language models give you uninspired content really for authors that does not reflect your perspective, does not reflect your, they lack unique voice and the perspective of human authors. Another, I think, important challenge that we see across the world is the misinformation and disinformation. And the World Economic Forum in their Global Risk Report, you know, this year they have identified misinformation and disinformation as the biggest risk, you know, maybe the second biggest risk, after climate change that the world will see. And why is that important? Because the world is coming to elections, whether it's in the US, whether it's in the UK, whether it's many parts of the world, and we see, you know, the negative, you know, impact of deep fakes when it comes to misinformation, disinformations. And we see a lot of court cases coming now. The most recent one was the stealing that happened using deep fake for $25 million, where a CFO literally convinced one of his employees in a deep fake scenario where everyone got into a meeting. The CFO sent an email to his subordinate, you know, one of the controllers or one of the accountants, summoning him to a meeting. And this guy came to the meeting, and so everyone was there in the room. It was an online meeting. He did not realize that all those personalities were fake, and instructed him to transfer $25 million from the account of the company to a different account. And all this this was an actual use case.
This sounds promising.
Right.
In a way, if it's used in the right way. We're running out of time. Can we speed up to take questions?
Yeah, I want to just highlight other issues. Of course, ethical and legal issues are here, play a bigger role when it comes to the use of these language models. The issue of bias, you know, bias in the data, the training data that those large language models were trained on. So we as authors or content writers, we need to be aware of this bias. The issue of copyright ownership, I think Caroline here has spoken about this. I think we need to be a bit more critical when it comes to the use of these large models and use judgment, because when you look into the output, you are the person who can judge whether this output makes sense, and you need to be aware as well. You need to be aware if that you are not violating or infringing any copyright, even whether it is text or with the images. So we use now also large language models to generate images, and when we see those images, how to make sure that this image is not an image of a person that is, of a person, and you go and use it without.
So we don't trust AI that much. We have to judge ourselves.
Yes. This is the thing. And I think when it comes to ethics of authorship is about honesty and integrity. You know, when we publish something, we need to at least put a disclaimer that we have used AI in this way, okay? So people understand that, you know, AI, and I mean, this is something natural. We used calculators when calculators came, and now we're using these tools as something that can help us. So you need to put a disclaimer. We need to be transparent, and I think Caroline here has highlighted about the European Union AI Act, which has been approved, you know, last year and endorsed this year, and where it says that companies who will train large language models, they need to be transparent about the data that they use to train those large language models. And I think that thing is about, you know, just to be critically aware about misinformation, bias and copyright infringement, that we need a human oversight. You cannot let, you know, I've seen this actually happening, and even with scientific research, that scientists, they use ChatGPT and they copy exactly what ChatGPT, and even with the first statement, you know, that is there, you know, they forget to review and to look at the outcome and critically assess it, and, you know, so.
Thank you very much. We're running kind of out of time. Do you have a question? Ihab here, Dr. Ihab. By the way, he's an expert in AI, and he just won an award for last book fair with our book. So that's what I'm promoting as well. Everybody's promoting.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif. Thank you, honorable speakers, for this fruitful discussion. And actually, when we are speaking about the content industry and AI technology, it's not limited to publishing industry. It's cover everything in our life. Actually, when speaking about content, we are speaking about the most influential way for humans how to communicate. We are texting more than speaking. We're using our fingers now more than our tongues. So, my first question, which is considered like a little bit challenging question in the content industry, and I'm serious in that to have an answer from your side. Can you enumerate a list of things that will not be affected by AI in publishing industry? And if there is no list like that, can you assure that the content will not be biased? How we can assure that the content is represented for everyone in the country, for every minority, for indigenous people, for local minorities, for local languages? How we can assure that? This is my question. Thank you very much.
That's a big question, yeah, because I think this depends on everything. Like, if we both search on Google with the same term, we'll get different results. So we have to think about this. Can someone reply to this? But we're running out of time, so we'll have to be fast.
Yeah. I think everybody will be affected by the generative AI and the revolution we are witnessing in this direction. Not necessarily publishing. Everyone will be affected by this technology. This technology is not the calculator, and it is not the Excel sheet, because people like to say that this is the example we should be looking at. The Excel sheet, people thought it will replace the accountant, but no one have been replaced by Excel sheet. AI is different. It's totally different, and we will be witnessing, I think, the advancements from NVIDIA. It will be making a lot of things to be revised shortly. I think in 2-3 years we will find a lot of amazing results that will bring the right context to the language model, which is bad news for a lot of people, but I think this is a fact. What we need to do is to protect ourselves from being biased against certain culture or certain demographics, etc., is to have our own technology. We need to have our own technology, and that's why I'm calling for partnership in this, and this is not a national pride for each of the region. We have to work together.
Collaborate on the Arabic
we have to
language
collaborate.
specifically, because
Otherwise,
even more sophisticated.
Otherwise, it will be more sophisticated to face the challenges in the coming 3 or 4 years, not necessarily 10 years. So I think this is number one. Number two is working on the digital literacy, the literacy programs for the nation. How to know the misinformation and disinformation, how to differentiate. We have to use our minds about this.
About fake news and how
Exactly. This is very important. And also we have to work and encourage more the startups. Startups is the future. I'm talking about the young people. Startups, they think the digital way from start, and we have to rely on this and invest more and more in the language models, and we collaborate.
Thank you very much. Before ending, I would just want to ask a personal question for each of you. How do you use really, what apps or websites that you use for AI in your daily life? I'm just curious, maybe this would be something useful that everybody can use.
Yeah, I encourage people to engage with AI in every way that they can.
So what do you use on your desktop?
I use on my phone and desktop separately, more or less replaced Google search with Perplexity AI, which essentially is an online connected AI that Amazon's invested quite a lot in, and it gives all citations and all of your sources. So instead of going to a Google thing and then having 5 things and choosing which one you want to read, it reads them all for you, synthesizes them, and then gives you the sources so you can go into the individual ones if you like. I use Claude for best writing of things. I use ChatGPT if I want it to be a bit unimaginative, to be honest. I just find it very straightforward. And then, we're playing around with quite a lot of visual production AI. So Vision AI, OpenAI's Vision works we're using. And I'm also playing around with quite a lot of music production, which is interesting to do. So Sora and Sonar.
Caroline?
Yeah, so I've also played around with quite a lot of these models, and their capacities are fascinating. But I think what's also amazing is we're using AI in our daily lives even without deliberately doing so. So the minute you open anything from Microsoft, they've invested a huge amount in AI, and it's all there in the products you use, which is why I would return to the fact that getting this copyright issue is right, because I'm sure a lot of us, in this publishing world don't want to be using products that have been infringed. But you can't really avoid often using AI products. So let's get the copyright issue right, then we can enjoy the AI products that we're all encountering each day.
Using ChatGPT-4 and Freepik and Midjourney, also the Gemini for Google Workplace, and finding wealth of information in my emails, which was not possible by normal search, and recently working on Microsoft co-piloting technology.
Dr. Saeed?
I use the same tool, Perplexity, and actually I encourage you to use it because I find
in Arabic, something works with you better in Arabic?
In Arabic, I've tried Jace. Jace is, by the way, is called Jace based on Jebel Jace in Ras Al Khaimah. It's the first Arabic-based large language model that was developed by G42, Core 42 subsidiary with Mohammed bin Zayed University for Artificial Intelligence. Why Jace? Because it's focused on Arabic large language, Arabic natural language processing, because it's been trained, most of the data that's been trained is Arabic language. So it's good in Arabic when it comes, to the Arabic. I've tried ChatGPT and I sometimes compare both, and I find Jace is good. But as a tool, generally, I like Perplexity. Why? Because Nadeem says that it gives you citation, and less hallucination. It's based, again, you can choose the model, the base model that you work with, whether it's GPT-4 or Anthropic Claude. I like to use Claude because I find Claude is really a very good model. And now Llama 3. I use two other tools important when I come to search. I mean, rather than using Google search, I use a tool called Find. Find is a search tool based on large language models, which happens to give me really what I want when I want to look for articles. And I use, of course, DALL-E 3 when it comes to image generation through Microsoft Copilot. But we need to worry because sometimes when I ask it, generate a picture of a female, UAE female, it generates a picture of a UAE female wearing the kata and hijab. And this is, of course, is not in the culture.
So still they're working on it. Okay, we learned
these
that.
culture-sensitive issues that we see these large language models are really very dumb when it comes to, culture sensitivity.
Dr. Mohammed, you want to add one last thing? We're out of time.
One last thing. I want to draw the attention for startups and companies working on the Arabic language technology for more than 15 years, and they have already the technology about the AI, but they have not implemented the language model. I think the marriage of these companies with the language model of G42 will make an advancement for the Arabic language in the coming period.
Hopefully. Thank you very much for all your insights. They will kill me. We're running out of time. We ran already out of time. So you can ask, individually after that will be available. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for the panel. I think we have a lot to work on and we'll see changes in the coming future. Thank you.